支配なんかしねえよ。この海で一番自由な奴が海賊を。
Monkey D. Luffy, also known by the nickname Straw Hat, is the captain and founder of the Straw Hat Pirates. They are a group of pirates consisting of 10 powerful fighters. Luffy's decision to become a pirate and form this crew is closely tied to his desire to find the legendary treasure and become the Pirate King, like Gold D. Roger. When Luffy was a child and first saw the red-haired Shanks pirate crew, he instantly developed a dream and a strong desire to become a pirate. Because of this, Luffy often begged and insisted that Shanks take him aboard the ship so he could go on adventures with the crew. From these actions, we can see that Luffy has had strong ambition and determination since childhood. He will never give up until he achieves his dreams and desires. He's even willing to do anything to become a pirate. Now, the main reason Luffy wants to become the Pirate King is not merely because he wants to rule the world or collect as much treasure as possible. He's not the type of person who is ambitious and greedy like that. In fact, Luffy believes that by becoming the Pirate King, he will become the person with the greatest freedom in the world. Moreover, the strong determination and life purpose he holds are not only for himself, he often helps others, including his crew members. For example, when he stopped Nami from hurting herself with a knife because she had given up and was disappointed in Arlong. In that situation, Luffy came to help Nami. Then, without thinking twice, he went to Arlong's base and managed to defeat him, even though it was difficult. Because of that, we can conclude that Luffy is someone who has strong resolve, loves freedom, and deeply cares about his friends. Maybe that's a brief picture of the Luffy we've known so far, but his personality isn't as simple as it seems. There's still so much more we can learn from this character. That's why, in this video, we'll take a deeper look at Luffy's personality, exploring the life journey and struggles he has faced throughout the One Piece series. Luffy's life journey began in Fuchsia Village, located in East Blue, the place where he was born. Then, at the age of 7, Luffy met and befriended a pirate crew led by red-haired Shanks. That was when Luffy became interested and determined to become a pirate after interacting with Shanks and his crew. He even stabbed the area under his left eye to prove himself to Shanks that he was worthy of joining their crew. Unfortunately, Shanks refused Luffy's request because he was still too young to join. One day, Luffy and Shanks' crew went to a bar, a place they usually hung out. There, a group of bandits came and caused trouble for Shanks and his crew. They even went as far as severely insulting Shanks. However, Shanks just remained silent and didn't react to their treatment. Seeing that, Luffy was disappointed in Shanks for doing nothing, even though he admired Shanks as someone strong. That's why Luffy got angry at Shanks, and eventually he accidentally ate the Gomu Gomu no Mi devil fruit, which caused his body to have rubber-like properties. Still upset at the bandits, Luffy went to confront them to vent his frustration. But because he was still a child, Luffy was easily defeated and taken hostage. Eventually, the red-haired pirates defeated the bandits, but their leader, Higuma, escaped to the sea while still holding Luffy hostage. After escaping, Higuma threw Luffy into the sea, intending for him to be attacked by the Sea King. Luckily, Shanks managed to save Luffy, though it came at a high cost, as he lost his left arm to the Sea King. After that incident, Shanks had to set sail again with his crew. But before he left, he and Luffy made a promise to each other that one day, Luffy would surpass Shanks and become the Pirate King. Luffy's strong desire to become the Pirate King deeply impressed Shanks. So, Shanks gave Luffy his straw hat. This straw hat was a farewell gift and a symbol of the promise that Luffy must return it once he surpasses him. So the reasons why Luffy strengthened his resolve to become the Pirate King are: first, because he saw Shanks sacrifice his arm to save him. Second, because Shanks entrusted him with the valuable straw hat as a symbol of their agreement and trust. Ever since then, Luffy has gained a clear challenge and direction in his life: to become the Pirate King and surpass Shanks. In his life journey, Luffy had 2 foster brothers who also became his older brothers. They were Portgas D. Ace and Sabo. Luffy first met Ace when his grandfather, Monkey D. Garp, left him in the care of a mountain bandit named Dadan.
One day, Luffy followed Ace as he was heading out because he wanted to start a friendship with him. After 3 months of persistently following Ace, he finally discovered Grey Terminal. There, Luffy overheard Ace and Sabo talking about buying a pirate ship.
Upon hearing that, Luffy appeared in front of them and said that he also wanted to become a pirate. Shocked that Luffy had overheard their conversation, Ace and Sabo decided to tie him to a tree. They even planned to take extreme measures by considering killing Luffy to protect their secret. While Luffy panicked and cried in fear like any child would, Ace and Sabo hesitated, unsure who should be the one to kill him, because they had never killed anyone before. But even though Ace and Sabo intended to kill him, Luffy still considered Ace his friend and remained loyal to him. Even when he was tortured by the Blue Jam pirates, Luffy refused to betray Ace, whom he saw as his friend. That's why Luffy had initially followed Ace and approached Sabo, because he wanted to have friends. Luffy revealed that he had no parents to take care of him, so for him, the most important thing was that he didn't want to be alone. Because of that moment, Ace and Sabo finally began to trust Luffy, and the three of them officially became friends. But the bond they formed wasn't just ordinary friendship. They made a brotherhood vow and held a small ritual by sharing sake with each other. That ritual deepened their bond and made them brothers. Luffy's journey began when he was 17 years old. At that time, he had already mastered the basic powers of the devil fruit he possessed. Before setting off on his adventure, he thanked Dadan and the other bandits who had taken care of him. Then, Luffy left the village, riding a small boat and carrying a barrel. From the very start of his journey, he was determined to create his own pirate flag and to gather 10 crew members. With burning passion, Luffy shouted his ambition to the world that he would become the Pirate King. Luffy's encounter with his first crew member began quite unexpectedly, when he happened to be inside a barrel that was discovered by a group of pirates. When Luffy emerged from the barrel, it was then that he first met Kobe, a cabin boy whom Luffy later freed after defeating the pirate captain aboard the ship. After that, Kobe accompanied Luffy on his journey to the next island so he could apply to join the Marines. When they arrived, Luffy decided to seek out the infamous pirate hunter Roronoa Zoro, who was imprisoned at the time. Upon reaching Shell's Town, Luffy and Kobe learned the truth about Zoro from a little girl named Rika, who explained that Zoro had been imprisoned for saving her and her mother from Helmeppo. After discovering this, Luffy resolved to free Zoro and promised to retrieve his confiscated swords from the Navy, on one condition, that Zoro would join his crew. And so, Zoro agreed and officially became Luffy's first crewmate. The two of them continued their journey until they arrived at Orange Town. There, they met Nami, a skilled navigator. When Luffy tried to recruit her, Nami initially refused. In fact, she captured and tied him up to deliver him to Buggy the Clown. Fortunately, that wasn't Luffy's end. He chose to fight back against Buggy and his crew, ultimately winning the battle. Now joined by a new navigator, Luffy sailed onward to the next island in search of more crew members. Upon arriving at Syrup Village, Luffy met a man named Usopp. In this village, Luffy, Zoro, Nami, and Usopp fought to defend it from the deceptive schemes of Captain Kuro, who had wicked plans for a beautiful girl named Kaya. After the incident, Luffy and his crew received a ship as a reward for helping Kaya. This ship became known as the Going Merry. As Usopp descended the hill with a huge backpack, Luffy and his crew invited him to join the Straw Hat Pirates. Usopp, now Luffy's new companion, joined the voyage. At one point, Luffy and Usopp began practicing with the ship's cannon. Unfortunately, Luffy's shot went off course and hit an island. On that island, Johnny was caring for his sick friend Yosaku. So Johnny came aboard the Going Merry to demand accountability. After explaining the situation, Luffy apologized and did his best to help heal Yosaku. Despite their efforts, nothing worked. Eventually, Luffy realized their crew needed a cook. Upon hearing this, Johnny told Luffy where to find one, at a floating restaurant called Barity. This restaurant became the place where Luffy sought the crewmate he needed, a cook named Sanji, but convincing Sanji to join was no easy task. Luffy tried multiple times to persuade him, until Sanji spoke of his dream to find the All Blue. After witnessing Luffy's struggle against Don Krieg firsthand, Sanji was moved.
Additionally, Zeph, the head chef of the restaurant, encouraged Sanji by saying that Luffy was someone capable of changing his perspective. Finally, Sanji accepted the invitation and officially became a member of the Straw Hat crew. Those were some examples of how Luffy recruited members for the Straw Hat Pirates. But generally speaking, Luffy's invitations were often initially rejected before they were accepted. However, Luffy never forced anyone to join his crew. He always hoped that if someone joined, it would be of their own free will, not because of pressure from him or anyone else. Take Sanji, for example. Even though Sanji initially refused, he eventually made the decision himself to join. Another example was when Luffy tried to recruit Franky. Luffy didn't use force, but instead used a rather strange, yet effective, method. He took Franky's underwear. Eventually, after receiving advice from Iceberg, Franky voluntarily joined the Straw Hat crew. Luffy's persistence in recruiting Franky was clearly due to Franky's invaluable skills in maintaining, repairing, and modifying ships. This moment showed that Luffy wasn't always a goofy, naive person. He could also be calculating and aware of the practical needs of his crew, like needing a great shipwright. Even though some crew members initially rejected Luffy's invitation, there were others who accepted immediately. One such case was when Luffy recruited Brook. There, we saw Luffy's unique personality, wanting someone in his crew simply because of their unusual appearance. A similar situation occurred when Luffy invited Chopper to join. Luffy realized they needed a doctor, but his offer wasn't solely based on that. He saw Chopper as a cool and unique reindeer with 7 transformation forms. And then there was Gaiman, a man trapped inside a treasure chest. Even though Gaiman would have no real impact on the crew, Luffy still invited him because of his unusual appearance. It seemed Luffy's simple mind didn't overthink things. That very simplicity made his character so unique. What he truly aimed for was uniting that diversity to make his crew vibrant. Unlike previous cases, there was Nico Robin, who joined without even being invited. In fact, they were on opposite sides at first. It all began after Robin's leader, Crocodile, was defeated by Luffy. Luffy saved Robin from being crushed by the ruins of their battle. With no place left to go, Robin asked Luffy to let her join the crew, and with his innocent and trusting nature, Luffy accepted her request. The last crew member to join the Straw Hat Pirates was Jinbei. At first, Jinbei wanted to join after being invited by Luffy, but he stated that he still had unfinished business to take care of, specifically ending his alliance with the Big Mom Pirates. Then, once that matter was resolved, he happily and officially joined the Straw Hat crew. Basically, freedom is an inherent trait possessed by humans. To be human means being able to make choices based on one's own will, deciding what is good and what is evil according to one's own reasoning. Humans possess freedom because they are beings who are aware of their own existence. This is what is referred to as free will. Unlike animals, plants, or objects in this world that cannot possess the kind of freedom humans have, they cannot make decisions for themselves and are unaware of their own existence. But humans can always make that decision for themselves, even though it is also their own choice whether or not to use that freedom in their lives. Through the freedom they possess, humans become the authority over themselves. Purpose, meaning, and even our very essence can only be determined by ourselves. Indeed, humans cannot escape the influences of society, culture, religion, history, politics, and so on. Yet, humans still have the freedom to process and determine to what extent those things influence their lives. That is the meaning of freedom, a mindset that always drives Luffy's actions. If someone wants to become the Pirate King, they would generally use that status to accumulate wealth, indulge in luxury, be greedy for power, and the like. But Luffy is different. He wants to become the Pirate King because, to him, the Pirate King is the freest person in the world. Luffy is someone who loves freedom deeply. That's why the innocence and recklessness he often shows are rooted in that freedom. He doesn't want to be bound by overthinking things. In other words, if it's not too important, he doesn't want to be tied down by his own thoughts. He wants to do as he pleases, according to his own will. Luffy truly utilizes the freedom he has to make himself the authority over his own being, like when he was on Sabaody Archipelago. There, Luffy met Rayleigh, the former first mate of the Roger pirates. Since Roger had already obtained the One Piece treasure, it could be assumed that Rayleigh also knew where One Piece was located. But when Rayleigh tried to explain where One Piece was, Luffy immediately got angry and made it clear that he didn't want to know. He wanted to find One Piece through the path he chose himself. From this event, we can see that Luffy truly wants to achieve his goals through his own means, through his own authority. Luffy refuses to be a ruler or a boss over anyone because he wants to be free to do whatever he wants. Others should also have the same freedom as he does. That's why he doesn't want to be someone who commands others. During the formation of the Straw Hat Grand Fleet, he refused to be its leader. Instead, he wanted the factions to be equal and to help one another whenever needed. Furthermore, Luffy always shares the freedom he has. This can be seen when he liberates kingdoms or countries that are under certain authoritarian rule. For instance, when he defeated Arlong and freed Nami's hometown, defeated Crocodile in Alabasta, defeated Doflamingo, and many others. In the end, the freedom Luffy fights for is true freedom, because his freedom doesn't come at the expense of others. In fact, it grants freedom to others who are being oppressed. As a pirate, Luffy is extremely hungry for adventure. That is consistent with his reason for wanting to become the Pirate King, the freest person in the world. In his view, the person with the greatest freedom in the world has the ability to travel anywhere across the seas. Because of this adventurous spirit, he tends to avoid taking the easy way out, like when he destroyed the eternal pose given by Robin because he didn't want the enemy to dictate his destination. Usopp also argued that it might be possible to reach Laugh Tale without fighting the four emperors. Hearing this opinion, Luffy showed an extreme expression of disappointment, because he always visits various islands and locations that amaze him with their breathtaking views. He has no intention of stubbornly searching for where One Piece is until he finds it himself. He even firmly stated that he would stop being a pirate if his crew tried to find out directly from Rayleigh. He didn't want his adventure to become a boring one just because he already knew about One Piece beforehand. Another prominent trait of Luffy's character is his lack of defensiveness toward himself. Luffy is rarely cautious, even in dangerous situations. He can laugh heartily in the face of extreme peril. For example, when the Straw Hats approached the Knock-Up Stream to go to Skypiea, or when they decided to enter Thriller Bark and descend to Fishman Island. Luffy did all of that without ever showing fear. As someone who bears the name D, Luffy shares a common trait. He is not afraid of death. He often states that it's okay if he achieves his goal or dies trying. Luffy also smiled when he was about to be executed by Buggy in Logtown, a moment reminiscent of Roger's execution. Moreover, Luffy's bravery became even more evident when he rescued Robin from Enies Lobby. Because of her ability to read poneglyphs, Robin was considered a demon by the world government, and her existence had to be erased from the earth. Enies Lobby itself is a terrifying place for pirates. But without overthinking or hesitating, Luffy and his crew went there to save Robin. And they didn't hold back. They even burned the world government flag. Not only that, even if he's in a strange or terrifying place, he smiles, feels happy, or even laughs in such places. When facing the most dangerous and fearsome individuals like the Shichibukai, Yonko, or the Marines, Luffy doesn't hesitate to punch a celestial dragon with full force. He did that out of pure rage when his friend was treated cruelly by the celestial dragon. Throughout the One Piece series, we can see just how loyal Luffy is to his friends. He's even willing to sacrifice his own life to help them. That's what makes Luffy's personality so compelling. He deeply loves freedom, but he's not reckless with it, and he genuinely cares about his friends. He doesn't mind dying to achieve his dreams, and he also doesn't mind dying to save his friends. Thus, recklessly and spontaneously, he is willing to put his own safety in danger to protect those he cares about, even if it means risking death or causing permanent injury to himself. This can be seen during the Battle of Marineford when he tried to save Ace. There, Luffy asked Ivankov to inject him with hormones so his body could endure more in order to save Ace. Another example is when he repeatedly used Gear 3 to destroy Noah's ship at Fishman Island, even though he had already lost a lot of blood after fighting Hody Jones. If we look deeper, loyalty is defined as a person's steadfast and consistent devotion to another party, demonstrated through unwavering support and obedience to someone or something. From that understanding, what is the meaning of Luffy's loyalty when faced with his love for freedom? Does it contradict itself? Luffy is free not to fight so hard for others. He has the freedom to ignore those who ask for his help, free to turn away from those in trouble. These things align with his behavior of acting as he pleases. It seems that Luffy is not the type of person with a complicated way of thinking, especially when it comes to life principles. He does whatever he wants, regardless of whether his actions seem contradictory or not. He acts as he pleases and according to what brings him joy. If freedom is what makes him happy, then he loves freedom. The same goes for loyalty. If an act of camaraderie brings him joy, then he will do it. Luffy's free-spirited actions have, so far, always benefited many people. He hasn't turned into a selfish, greedy person who doesn't care about others. All of that stems from the kindness and extraordinary sincerity in Luffy's heart, so his actions never harm others. In the end, his unique personality, reckless, loyal, brave, and a lover of freedom, is not always as simple as it seems. He can deeply love freedom while still caring and feeling bound to others. His freedom and kind heart form an incredible combination that brings laughter and joy to many people, not to restrict or take away the freedom of others. That is Monkey D. Luffy.